From Dylan. Dylan, are you chatting with us about the program? Great. So we'll have you guys go second.
And we can
move
drop,
up MBR too since Joe's here.
Okay.
and we can drop 18, 19, and 20. I'm sorry, 19,
19, 20, 21. We'll remove those. Okay. And Joe, we'll share a couple of items regarding NBR as the third agenda item. Okay, I motion that we move the agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Then we have an announcement. As the village does each year, we're going to have free parking in the core business district from December 11th through the 26th for the purpose of encouraging local shopping during the holiday season.
Awesome.
And we'll put that on the website about which streets and which meters, and imagine we'll do the same thing that we did in the past where we'll take these stickers and put them on put them inside the hoods of
No,
the
they go
meters.
over the coin slots so they can't be missed.
Got it. Okay. And anyone here for a public comment? Nope. I motion we move the consent agenda.
So,
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Dylan, you want to join us and talk about the fire department junior program? You want to grab a mic?
Dylan, click your last, oh, you're back.
Thank you. So a recent challenge, obviously, that's well known is the number of volunteers that we have on the rolls. We're doing good, but we have to look into the future and what is going to fill in the back end or the younger side of our membership at some time. There's been a lot of increases in the amount of hours that are required even for the basic firefighter 1 course, which is required to be a member in our department. And what I've seen through research is that it's a lot easier, obviously, for younger youth, so high schoolers, to be able to have those summers to take this course. Firefighter 1, we're looking at over 100 hours now total to get certified. Our new county coordinator, Everett Erickson, is implementing a program because there are a lot of junior programs in place at this time to have a boot camp style program in the summertime when school would be out. And like I'm saying, that, like I said, bringing the older members, we have a challenge of being able to miss work and go on. So I've looked a lot into the junior program, which New Paltz Fire Department did have in the past. Some of the people that came out of junior programs was Corey Worthman, who was our first assistant chief, and Billy Bubbles went through the junior program with Modena. It was considered the cadet program was dismembered because of, I believe, an issue with a past mayor. They didn't want to continue the program or cover the insurance or whatever it was. I'm not positive on that. So really what we're trying to do is encourage youth to come into the program. There would be obviously a lot of rules and regulations in place because we don't want to put minors into dangerous situations necessarily. We'll put them in a situation where they can start training and observing and being a part of the program to hopefully foster interest when they turn 18 to become a full member. They can still be around fire halls, but we're very cautious in putting them into a dangerous situation, the hot zone. So they could help us in supportive ways, such as our auxiliary does, or maybe water supply away from the fire itself. They're not entering the structures, they're not going into these harmful situations, they're not dealing with critically injured people, with the mental aspect of it, but rather just get them interested in it, training, and then when they turn 18, be able to become a full-fledged member of our department. Bill, did you have that number with you?
which
The insurance number?
it was $275.
So Bill did some legwork for us, so it would be $275, and that was for 5 members, correct? 5 junior
I believe
members?
so, right.
Okay, so that would be the policy, the cost incurred for insurance purposes. Obviously, we always have to include the purpose, the costs of this member as any other firefighter that comes into our organization, which would be their personal protective equipment, because they're still going to firefighter 1 and learning. They will go into burn towers in the training scenario with state certified instructors. And of course, we want to give them the best protection as being a minor as possible. So, we're talking about it's about $5,000 per member usually.
So what are next steps? Would you go to the local high school and make this announcement and then hope that folks or high school students express interest, and then you'll select from those who express interest?
Yeah, so we have actually made a verbal agreement to be able to speak in participation in government class. We went that route because we do, on a annual basis, get members that come to us and ask for community service. So we think that that's obviously a good place to be for the idea of volunteering in your community. So what would happen from here is, if this was approved by the village as covering this expense, we'd go to the membership and just get it approved on the social side, because there's still the bylaws that have to be passed from the other side of the fire department. And then we would go and try to recruit youth from the age of 16 and 17, because at 18 they can be a full-fledged member.
So I know with the participation in government class, those are high school seniors, and it seems like you're looking for high school juniors.
Right, so we're trying to we're going to try to work our way back, because we're trying to figure out where those limitations are. We have to meet with the school.
Yeah.
And I also want to get an open dialogue with the school as it pertains to academic status, because we want to make sure that anybody involved in our program is not putting our program before school. So once we figure out where those rules are with the school, if we can set up a table at lunchtime or whatever it may be, that's the way that I think that we should definitely go with recruiting.
So the $275 additional expense, that was for 5 juniors?
I believe so, you're right. I haven't got a chance to speak to Nancy about what it covers, but she replied $275 for 5.
Because I seem to remember you guys were talking about the idea of having a finite number of individuals, 3 to 5.
Yeah.
Are you leaning more towards one number versus another?
We've had conversations about it. We're somewhere between 5 and 10.
Okay.
I would like to ask for 10, the possibility of 10, just for the pure fact that if we have 5 16-year-olds and 5 17-year-olds, that it would continue to build, backfill our program as they get older. But that all depends on the participation. I mean, if we get seven members total, we can cut it down to 5. I think it's just a matter of how many people show interest in it.
I think it depends on the age of the class and what the pool of young students, what the students have to offer and what they want to do.
Yeah. Included in that packet, if you guys were able to read it over, is also an essay that we're going to require. And we want to narrow it down and see more than just what an application shows. We want to kind of get a feel for that member's character, or that applicant's character. Make sure that they're in a good academic standing, and that they're in it for the right reasons. Just a little side note from the membership from the past was that they felt that at times it was a babysitting club in the past. So we cut out the 14 and 15-year-olds, because in New York State you can have as young as 14 in this junior program. So we want to go with 16 and 17, and from there pick out the best of the best, and hopefully really build this program up. But yeah, I think I would just like to ask for 10, with the possibility of anything less than 10 rounding down to 5.
Yeah. These are if you're unfamiliar with these programs, they're done throughout the country. They help build volunteer firefighters in their communities, and they're very successful, and sometimes they're very competitive, and of course there are standards that the students have to meet in order to continue the participation. They can't leave school, for example. If there's a call, they have to, they're in class, they stay in class. And then the trainings, they're able to go on trainings, they're able to go on some calls, depending on the situation. And but they're always accompanied and supervised by an adult member.
From just the other side of it, I've been really looking into this program, that if it were in place, we would also give an opportunity for officer enrichment within our own organization. And I was thinking about proposing a bylaw to our social side that to be qualified to be an officer in the department, starting at lieutenant, you would have to do at least 1 year of being a mentor in this program. So you're starting to build your skills to teach and interact and have to deal with people, specifically younger, which are usually more respectful than some of the older guys that you get, and it allows them to mature, and then if they want to become an officer, they'll have a little bit of a head start on it.
Sounds like another great program. Then.
Yeah, I've got a lot more positive than negative. And something that really got me was, I spoke with Billy, who was our captain. He lives in New Paltz. He went to Modena because we don't have a junior program. So that means that there are people out there. Also, another officer was RJ. He's our lieutenant. He went to Gardner for the junior program. We have junior programs currently in Gardner, Modena, Highland. And I think that's our immediate area that have junior programs, and they're all successful at this time.
Weren't there a couple of members, junior program members, that went on to become career firefighters?
Yes. I can't remember. I know we have one that's currently in the city of Poughkeepsie. He's no longer with us, but he went on to be a paid fireman in the city of Poughkeepsie. And I believe we have others that were involved in emergency services still to this day. So.
It wouldn't be a factor in me supporting the program, but I just wanted to ask one point of clarification. So the equipment that each individual young firefighter would need, is that something that you have the budget for now, or would you be looking to the village for additional funding?
So what we have currently is, there's a 10-year limit on all gear as it pertains to NFPA and the standards. We have currently in stock some gear that's got 2 years of life left on it. So this isn't necessarily something that we need to address at this current time, but it may be something when budgeting comes back around, maybe adding an additional set of gear every year onto what we normally have. So
in business, they call this an intern program. In baseball, it's a farm team.
Yeah,
it seems like a tried and true method.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a good start, and getting a lot of these courses out of the way when they're younger and have the ability to, I think will help in the long run. We get a lot of applicants that come in and want to do it, but just don't have the time because of work, because of family, because of, different things that they can't put in, 50, 100 hours for a course. So I think this is worth a shot at least.
And I think it's worth repeating that the amount of training one has to receive today is substantial. So it's a minimum of 125 hours of training to become an interior certified firefighter. And this is a good way of getting a start on towards that certification.
I have a question. So the firefighter one, I've heard that the training requirements have heightened in the last few years. Is that also the case for folks who don't want to do interior firefighting, if they just want to be drivers?
The exterior program is also increasing in hours. So what they're doing is, it's not just like, oh, we need to sit in the classroom for this much more. They're adding additional parts to it that they think are important. Hazmat response, firefighter survival in the cases where you have to get out of the building. And they're all additions that are definitely necessary, but obviously at the time it builds up more. So.
Yeah, and we wouldn't be training drivers with this program. We would be training.
No, my question
Right.
is separate from
Yeah.
from what we've been discussing here tonight. That was just
21's for driving, so that's out of the question, obviously. And then of course you don't want to forget about the youth. And the thing is that these certifications that they're going to get are going to go through life. within our own programs, they have the ability to take the national certification, so they can go anywhere in the United States afterwards and still be a firefighter. I know that's not great news for New Paltz, but as a youth program, it's got its perks for the youth as well, so.
Do we have any other items to discuss before we vote on whether we're authorizing this insurance increase? No? Okay, I motion that we, no?
Well, it sounded like the 270 or 275 was for 5.
Yep.
But Dylan's saying you want 10, or should we just start with the 5 and see how it goes? We can always come back later and add to that.
Is that what you think's best?
Yeah, I think that's, I don't think it's going to
We
be
can
that
also
much.
approve an amount not to exceed $600. So if
Yeah, I don't know
anyone
how buying the insurance incrementally
I just don't want to ask for
works.
more, so if it's something where we get a large influx, and I have to come back and ask for 5 more, then I'm willing to do that.
Please do.
So,
Yeah, that'd be a good
terrific.
problem.
That'd
to
be
have.
a good problem.
That'd be good news, yeah.
So we hope to see you soon in that.
So I'll say 5, well, I'll ask for 5 now.
And my understanding too is that you were looking to get 10 interested high school students and then end up with 5.
Hopefully, yeah, that's, I mean,
Once they hear what the actual.
right, I mean, if we get 20, I would definitely like to come back and narrow it to 10 if
Sure,
I can, so.
okay, so that can be revisited, but
Yes.
we'll start with
It's a good place to
authorizing
start.
this approval to add $275 insurance exposure to the village's policy for the purposes of supporting the New Paltz Fire Department Junior Program.
Second.
All in favor?
I-
So before we leave too, I wanted to add 2 other fire-related things. I was just looking at monthly numbers, year-to-date, because I'm always very interested in how many calls our members, our volunteer members respond to on average each day, and it's generally between 2 and 3. So I looked at the numbers through October, year-to-date, and it was 1.94 calls per day. So on average, 2 calls per day is what the 2017 has brought us so far. So we'll we have a couple days left to see what November shows us, and then we have December, but we're basically within our normal range of 2 to 3 calls per day. And then the other thing that Bill and I have been working on is the FEMA assistance for firefighters grant.
Yeah, juicy.
And that's a grant program to help us secure funding to buy fire medic equipment. And we basically worked with Chief Weeks, and we've soft-circled the items that we would seek funding for. All we're waiting for now is for that program to be announced.
That's right.
We were anticipating that the program application process would be announced already, but it has not. So we have our grant writer sitting at the edge of his seat, ready to pen that application as soon as the process is announced.
Yeah, and I have a meeting with him in the morning, with our grant writer.
You're chatting with
Yes.
Mark Lauer tomorrow?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you guys, I appreciate,
Thanks, Dan.
you guys have always worked awesome with us, and I always appreciate being able to come up and work things out with you, so thank you for all the work that you guys do. And,
My response to that is always, you're thanking us.
all right, everybody, have a good night,
You
thanks.
too, Dylan, thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
All right, so we're going to invite Anton and Bob. We're going to chat about what number was it on our...
11, no.
I had a couple of
17.
points I want to make first.
Okay.
I'll keep this to a minute or two. I had sent a primer to the village board, and I guess I just wanted to ask a question, because I'm really not sure of the answer. How many people at the board are currently subscribers to cable TV? Okay, just curious, because I'm not sure people are aware of the full menu of what Channel 23 has to offer. It does have the live meetings, and that's been our focus in discussing the topic. But just since midnight last night, there have been 5 rebroadcasts of a village board meeting, the first one from November. There are also regularly scheduled rebroadcasts at the town, but the town council, town planning board, village planning board, board of education. So people know that if they want to see a public meeting, they can do so on Saturday at 4 o'clock for a certain board, on Saturday at 9 o'clock in the morning for another board. The other very powerful bit of information is we can't get exact numbers out of Spectrum and Time Warner, but it's a good number pretty reliable number, that there are over 1,200 subscribers of the 7,000 people in the village of New Paltz. And that would, at the same rate, would make it about 2,400 out of the combined population of the town and the village. Compared to that, there are 20 subscribers to the village's YouTube channel. 22, pardon me. And I don't know if it's appreciated for people who use Facebook as their main point of communication, how very vital this resource is to the non-Facebook people. Yeah, one of whom is me. But I happen to know that 10 people just off the top of my head who watch meetings every week religiously and comment to me on Channel 23, who probably wouldn't do so. At least they say they wouldn't do so if they had to stream it on a device. So the last point before handing over the floor is that the village gets a cut for use of the infrastructure telephone poles. We get a cut of the money paid to Spectrum Cable from people who live in the village of New Paltz. And it is declining slightly, but it's over $30,000. The cost of both broadcasting meetings and also providing all the other programming, like the programming used by the community partnership, and just bridge offered at the community center, those sorts of things are all publicized on Channel 23. And the cost of that is $7,000 a year to the village. So out of 30 or 35, our cost is $7,000. And the justification for that has always been, if the village receives revenue from a subset of citizens, it is proper for the village to deliver some service unique to that subset for the money they bring into our coffers. If we get a bounty of $35,000 a year from a subset of our citizens, we are honor bound to provide a service in return for those funds. That's my point. And
I would love to respond to that before we invite Anton and Bob, because I think there's been a lot of confusion about why we're discussing what we're discussing. I couldn't agree with you more, Don, that there is significant value in airing these public meetings. And I think what we're trying to do is to actually improve access to these public meetings. The concept that has been researched by one of our staff is to use some hardware would actually improve taking meetings that are recorded and getting them directly to Channel 23. So the idea of jettisoning 23 is not been proposed at all. So what we're trying to do is to make that process more streamlined, because currently it's been the opposite of streamlined. It's been a very difficult, challenging process for our staff, where we've been relying on our public access coordinator to use DVDs and then get those uploaded to Channel 23. So what we're trying to do is to improve that process entirely. And in addition to that, also have meetings get uploaded to Facebook, YouTube, the village website, which currently they're not at all. There are many people in our community who do not have cable TV. And so if anyone wanted to watch this meeting currently, they would not be able to. So what we're trying to do is identify a solution that would actually improve access to that many more people. So, that's just my thoughts on, this concept of what we're trying to investigate here. So, invite you guys to the table.
Okay. Yeah, that's very good to hear. So, are you saying that you're supportive of continuing the broadcast of Channel 23 and the full spectrum of programming that they offer?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. I've been to every meeting we've discussed this, seen every email, and that's the first I've heard that sort of clear commitment. So that's wonderful.
I put a bit of effort into this, so here's a small bit of light reading for you. there will be a test afterwards.
Do we know who's getting the A?
Absolutely. No problem at all. Alrighty.
Can you pull that cord? Thank you.
Mind if I move that back just a hair, because I need a little bit of room. Just okay, so for the record, my name is Anton Stewart. I guess I'm here in the capacity as I'm a committee member of the Public Access Television, the Joint Public Access Television Committee. And I was asked to prepare a report for the village administration. My understanding at the time is that they were actually considering dropping the support for public access cable television in favour of streaming local government meetings to the internet. I'm given to believe the reasons for doing so were threefold. So I'd just like to say, obviously, I'd written this out before I heard your comments this evening, so forgive me. So firstly, as a cost-saving measure to eliminate the $7,000 per annum spent by the village to support the paid position of the public access TV coordinator. Secondly, to reduce the complexity and workload required by the existing system to record and broadcast a meeting. And thirdly, to make local government meetings accessible to the increasing number of people who've chosen to cut the cord and no longer subscribe to cable. As you can see before you, the report is quite substantial. It runs to over 30 pages plus the appendices, and time does not permit us to go through it in depth today. So no doubt you're going to be relieved to hear that I propose to provide just a brief summary this evening, focusing solely on the key points. I would suggest that it might be a good idea for each of you to read through the report in your own time. I would also mention, although I've done my very best to minimise any geek speak in the report, it is necessarily of a somewhat technical nature, and it's entirely possible that you may have questions. I will, of course, be more than happy to come back and answer any questions that you have. So let's start by taking a look at what I'm going to go over tonight. We'll begin by taking a very brief look at the existing system and the steps required to set up and operate it, along with touching on the problems, issues and frustrations that occasionally raise their head. Next, we'll do a super quick look at live streaming, that is, what is it, how to do it, and why do it anyway. Then we'll take a look at the quick look at the Boxcast option, its features, benefits, and detriments. Then I'll tell you about my alternative proposal, which is that simple, it really won't take that long at all. And finally, I'll provide a brief summary along with my recommendations on how best to move forward from here. So if you have any questions, I would ask, as we go through this brief presentation, that you jot them down and hold them to the end, so hopefully I can stay on track, because I appreciate I've got about 20 minutes to go through this, so I'm going to do the best. So why don't we dig right in and start by turning to the diagram of the existing AV system on page 6. And I do have copies if people in the audience want to look at it. So the first thing you'll note, because words fail, diagram follows, is always a good way where I come from, that the system actually consists of two separate parts. The audio side, which is over to the right-hand side of the page, a block of 5 separate blocks there, and the video side, which comprises just one item, which is the camera itself, and it all comes down to the splitter here. So let's start off by talking very quickly about microphones. Well, you need a microphone to record sound. The village, to my understanding, has 5 dynamic microphones. These are the SM48s, and 1 boundary microphone, which is that little fellow you see on the table there. The dynamic microphone is what you normally know. It takes no power, but you do have to, that's pure off-access response, so you have to get close to it for it to really work. And so it's great for certain situations like a PA system or vocal response or whatever. It's not ideal for recording. If you have like a number of different people around the table at different distances with different sort of levels of speaking, some are loudspeakers, some are soft, then really you need something more specialized for it, and that's where the boundary microphone comes in. Put it in simple terms, it uses the surface of the table to actually collect the sounds, reflect it, concentrates it, and records that. And you can get away with like 2 or 3 of those where you would need several microphones. The unfortunate thing with the boundary microphone is they are condenser, which means they need to be powered, which is where the phantom power injector comes in. Because the little mixer that we actually have in the equipment closet there, although it is capable of providing phantom power, i.e. powering microphones, it won't provide enough voltage. So it needs a phantom power injector which is connected to the lead, and you have to turn that on as well. All the mics are then connected to this little patch bay you'll find behind you there, which is hardwired into the mixer amp in the closet. Okay, there's 2 channels, there's 8 inputs into that, although you'll notice there's only 6 connections in the wall. And one goes to the PA speakers we see up here, the other one is fed to the AV splitter, which actually is the audio source for the recording. Okay, with me so far? The other thing that we've got is the pan tilt zoom camera there, which is a Sony EVID100. In its day is okay, but it really is designed for surveillance applications, not broadcast. It's controllable remotely. It comes with a remote controller, which is one of the 3 in the closet, but that's limited to really just turning it on, turning it off. Okay, everything is connected then to the AV splitter, and that is a really simple piece of equipment. It takes one signal and splits it. And connected into that is we have our VGA DVI recorder, which is made by a firm called Epiphan, I'm sorry, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. A Sony DVD recorder and a cable modulator. So the idea of the system when it was originally put in was that was the only thing we needed, the Epiphan recorder, the DV recorder. The reason being is that it would actually provide access via the local area network to be able to recover recorded media and do whatever you want with it, either upload it up to YouTube, the content delivery network, or record it to a DVD or whatever. My understanding was that there was never really any training given on the operation of this particular thing, so consequently people found themselves, stuck, didn't know how to use it properly. So to try and simplify things, this was then, the task was given to the public access TV coordinator who has the technical setup to do it. However, that ran aground fairly quickly, as I understand it, because of security issues. He's not authorized to access the secure network here remotely, and so consequently to make the best of a bad job, a DVD recorder was installed, and what happens now is there's an additional layer where a DVD is actually burned at the same time as the recording, and that is then collected by the public access TV coordinator and subsequently uploaded to YouTube. When the camera is turned on, it goes through to the cable TV modulator, and this is basically just like half a modem. It just sends, it doesn't receive as well. So what that does is encodes the audio and video signal and sends it directly to Spectrum, to their network, where it's decoded the other end. There's a similar piece of equipment on the other end which decodes it and then sends it to channel 23. So the other thing that you'll find in the closet is a digital cable box, which is provided by the cable company, and attached to that is a TV monitor, and the other 2 remotes control those 2 things. The digital cable box, so we can actually tune into channel 23, it's all broadcasting digital, you need a digital cable box to watch it, and the TV obviously to watch it on to ensure that the broadcast's going ahead. So that sums the entire system, but what I would like to go through, because this is one of the biggest bones of contention about everybody, is the number of steps necessary to actually set up and record a meeting and break it down afterwards. So I broke these down, I did a little bit of time management on it. I did actually ask Christina to tell me, but she was way too buried to be able to give me, a detailed breakdown, but she did estimate that it takes her about 30 minutes. I watched Alex do this, and it took her 15 the one time when she did this, but I've broken the steps down. So you can see it's broken into 3 separate parts. This starts on page 14 and runs through 15, 16. It's broken into 3 separate parts: the actual setup, the recording broadcast, and then the breakdown at the end of the subsequent tasks. By far, the biggest amount of effort that goes into broadcasting, setting up to record a meeting, is setting out and positioning the microphones, plugging them in, making sure they're all working. And ideally step 4, which is almost never performed because it requires a minimum of 2 people to do it, is actually adjusting the gain levels to ensure we don't have feedback, but we've got a clear audio signal. And that each microphone is actually working. So, I've added these up. The actual recording comes down to just really pressing one button. It's fairly straightforward. And now, obviously, because we have the DVD recorder as well, you've actually got to set that recording too. And then that takes a matter of seconds, literally, to do that. And then breaking down takes quite a bit of time as well, because all of the microphones have got to be recovered. And one of the biggest issues you'll notice in bold, I put where there are problems that have occurred, where it's actually thrown people in the past, is actually remembering to finalise the DVD. If you eject the disc without finalising, it's useless. It can't be played in the DVD player, and so whatever's on it is inaccessible. The recorder does actually prompt you to do that, so it is fairly straightforward. But I know people get flustered, somebody's talking to you, and they're trying to do something else, and it does occasionally get mixed. One of the issues I also see, and if you take a quick look under the table, is the microphone cables are now a little bit of a rat's nest. So I'm going to take a guess and say that nobody's been trained how to even coil a microphone cable. It's a very simple thing to do, but if you don't do it, the cable won't lay flat. It'll wind up with permanent knots and twists in it, and it'll fail really quickly. And I think you've had plenty of failed cables. So that's a little step, which doesn't take a long time to master. That's worth doing. All in all, to set up, record, and break down after a meeting takes an average of 40 minutes. That's what I reckon. That's my thing. Okay. So let's have a look, see where we're on. So let's move on to live streaming. On the next page, 17, I've given you a brief history where it comes from. I don't propose to go through that this evening. I'll let you read that. But suffice to say, it's really only taken a huge buzz in the last couple of years, since 2015. But what is live streaming? Put bluntly, it's actually taking an event, which like this now, and streaming it live to a content delivery network. What the hell's a content delivery network? Well, they exist simply to deliver your content, hence content delivery network, or also known as a content distribution network. You need that because of bandwidth. And basically, if you think that a full HD video stream will occupy 8 megabits, and if you've sprung for the best connection you can possibly get from Spectrum, you're going to have an upload speed of 15 megabits, you can't support 2 simultaneous streams. So you have to just upload it to a content delivery network who then redistributes it, which makes it accessible by millions of users worldwide. So there are 3 principal content delivery networks. I've covered that in some detail, you can read about it. But there are 3 really that we should be looking at. And they all do different things. Forget Periscope, it's Twitter, and it's in its end game at this point, I would suggest. There's Ustream, which is great for people at the very top end of the market, such as teaching hospitals that practice telemedicine, but it's hellish expensive. The reason being is it supports up to fully uncompressed 4K streams. Top end of their subscription is $999 a month. The village doesn't want to spend that, and nor do you need to. Facebook Live, which is really for the sort of replacement of a moving selfie. Hi guys, here I am at the Newpolt's Village Board meeting, and we'd like to say hello. That's that. It's typically a tiny video. It's for the attention deficit audience, really. It's just, you scroll through Facebook. It's not something that somebody's going to maintain interest in. So that brings us to really the only practical choice, which is YouTube. And YouTube is absolutely free to stream live with, so it's good news. So how to broadcast a live stream? Well, it's pretty straightforward. You would basically need to take the AV signal that we've got now and run it through something called an encoder. And the encoder it could either be hardware or software. If it's software, it can run on a computer, but that means somebody has to sit there and do it. There are free versions available, but that isn't going to happen. So typically a hardware encoder would be okay. And ideally one that once you've set it, you don't need to do much with it. You just hit the button or whatever and away you go. So yeah, I've explained that on page 20, you can dig through that. So why live stream anyway? And it certainly is worth looking at. Well, in my, to the best of my knowledge, in my opinion, there really are only two compelling reasons to actually stream live. To allow viewers to access an event they couldn't otherwise watch or attend. In other words, it's not broadcast by any other means, such as a music event or a sporting event, a concert, etc. The live stream in this instance is almost always monetized, either by means of advertising revenue or by pay-to-stream fees, ticket sales in other words, very similar to cable's pay-per-view. Okay? Or secondly, to allow interaction with the audience, okay, where viewers can actually ask questions, make comments while the event is in progress, and the broadcasters, the presenters, can actually respond to those in real time. Now, I will tell you, my own company, The Awareness Shop, actually does do live streaming. We post stuff on YouTube all the time, a magazine which is available to everybody. But we also do a lot of courses and classes in-house. And many people have asked us, why can't you make these available to us? And we live in California, we'd love to attend, but we can't get there. So we figured out live streaming is the way to go. And what we actually do then is we sell the course package to somebody. They actually buy it, whatever the cost of the course is. And with that, then they get some material like the handouts we would give in a class. They can download those. And what they also get is access to a private YouTube stream. So we stream this class, we video it while it's actually in place, and we stream it directly to YouTube. And we have a list of people, allowed subscribers via email address. They have to use the YouTube account to do it. And they can tune in and see that event. Nobody else can see it. And it's not available to anybody else ever. But these people have to have paid money. So it works really well for us. And it's great in that actual respect. So in part of my summary, and I'll go through this again, is as far as I'm aware, I could be wrong here, the village has no wish to monetize local government meetings by doing pay-to-stream tickets, and nor do you seek to actually interact with your audience. So I'm not sure why you need to live stream. The only plausible reason is for convenience. And I'll buy that convenience, because the nice thing about YouTube is when you live stream, it automatically records it. So it's available like a video you can watch at a later stage. All right, so that's live streaming. Let's look at Boxcast and what they're offering. So Boxcast is, they've got a proposal on the table, and there's actually in the appendices a copy of their proposal and agreement for you to have a look at as well. What is Boxcast? How does it work? Well, it's a hardware encoder coupled with a proprietary intermediary streaming service. Okay, one won't work without the other. They're interdependent. You need the Boxcast encoder to use the Boxcast service, and you need the Boxcast service to use the Boxcast encoder. The Boxcaster itself is basically a no-frills H.264 encoder, but the nice thing is about it, the really good thing about it, is it needs no configuration. It has simply 3 connections: power, audio, video, and internet, and bam, it's online, done. Okay, which is really cool. And if you have a look on the next page, actually see where that would fit into it. And at the time, forgive me, I assume that this was in replacement to, not in addition to, the whole of the channel 23. So it would be connected on the remaining port on the splitter, and would go, as you can see, then connected to its proprietary cloud-based service, and away it goes to YouTube. The one thing that we went through that they forgot to look at, you'll notice, is you still need to monitor your stream. If you'll notice in your closet now, there's a TV in there which is monitoring what's going on live on channel 23. Unless you monitor what's going out to your live stream, you don't know it's even going out, and something could go wrong, and unless you can't deal with it.
Can you monitor it with just a smartphone?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, but you've got to have something.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, either a computer, but somebody's got to be responsible for doing that, and also be able to, act on it.
Yeah.
Can I just want to, I
Of
know
course.
you wanted at the end, but.
Sure.
So this schematic is just if the Boxcast is additive, but if Boxcast is the only.
The things with the no symbol on top of it have been removed. I mean, they don't have to be removed.
Right.
Okay, so if it wasn't
coexist.
If they absolutely, they could coexist, KT, absolutely. So I just want to go through. As I said, the Boxcast service is a proprietary service. My understanding is, although it starts at $19.99 a month, they're looking to charge the village $129.98 a month for a 12-month agreement, which will require that. That will automatically renew on a 12-month term unless you contact them. So I'll let you read through that yourselves, but I just want to go through the benefits and then look at what perhaps Bobcast didn't tell you. It's pitched as a very simple, affordable and reliable live streaming service which requires no technical expertise whatsoever. The Bobcast hardware does require no initial configuration, just 3 connections to make it go online. They have a dedicated local government sales team who will happily come out and make a presentation to the municipalities. I believe they have. And the service can be administered on any web browser or a free smartphone app which is available for both iOS or Android. What they didn't tell you, okay, there's way more to it than just plugging in the Boxcaster and pressing a button. You still need to go online, you've got to configure the whole interface, you've got to configure your Boxcaster first, you've got to schedule your programming, you've got to set up your connections, etc., before you can stream any content. Looking, and I've looked at it, the Boxcast web configuration interface is no more intuitive or less complex than anything that's built into a modern live streaming device. You still really need to know what you're doing to be able to operate it efficiently. Thirdly, there are cheaper available options, or cheaper options that are available that don't require a monthly subscription. That the Boxcast encoder is completely useless without the service, even though you're paying for it. And that their technical support staff can only provide assistance with their hardware and service. They can't provide support for equipment on which they have no knowledge or training other than the basic, well, is it plugged in and turned on? The concept of being able to call just one company that is responsible for the whole is a complete myth. They're only going to provide support by email, chat or phone, and they're not going to come out at the drop of a hat if something goes wrong. You're going to have to call someone for that and presumably pay them for it. Okay. I'll let you read through these, but the Boxcast is not a panacea for all the AV problems. I've looked at this in depth. It doesn't replace anything, it adds to it, and as such, it isn't making anything simpler. It's actually adding yet another layer of complication and an additional point of failure. I've gone in to explain that, and it also, most importantly, it won't improve the quality of your broadcasts. Even though it is capable of broadcasting in HD, your camera isn't.
Yeah,
so,
but we've known that all along.
Okay, yeah.
That's
But I did want to say there was a discussion about getting the starter pack also, which has got an HD camera with it. The unfortunate thing is, I don't know whether you're aware, the HD camera needs to sit on a tripod. It isn't wall mountable, it's not remote controllable. And it will actually require somebody to operate the camera if that's what's going on. So you're back to needing a camera operator. And the other thing I would caution you about the starter pack, I actually went online and priced up all the individual things. It's a cool $430 above retail for what's included in it. So you might just want to look at that. So good news is, there's an alternative, all right? So if you went over, I want to call this my own particular alternative. I was asked to come up with something that works just as easily, is as easy to implement, and could be done with a simple press of a button and isn't going to cost anything. I did. And the good news is you actually already have the ability to stream with the equipment you've got. You don't need to spend anything. The Epiphan VGA DVI recorder is actually a live streaming device. It's fairly modern. It was actually launched at the end of December 2014. It has a built-in web interface which is accessible for configuration and also accessible remotely for streaming. It can be configured to simultaneously live stream to a content delivery network. And so the same press of the button with it right now would also stream it straight to live at the same time. No cost, no fees, nothing. Just needs to be configured. And that's it. So you can see how it would fit in the existing setup on the next page. Takes a live stream there. Even though the stream will be recorded on YouTube to be able to watch later, I would strongly suggest that we continue to record to DVD. It's a backup if the equipment fails. And secondly, most importantly, it is a physical archive copy. DVDs are very hard to destroy. Anything that's recorded in a digital medium on a hard drive or even an SSD will fail eventually. You have to physically damage a DVD to make it unreadable. So DVDs are great archives. If you are required, and I don't know what the legalities are, but if you are required to archive, then continue to record by DVD. I mean, this could be done at a later stage. Somebody could pop onto the YouTube channel and actually download the DVD and burn that, download the live recording and burn it to a DVD. But, you know, it's easy enough just to press record on the DVD recorder. You know, it's not terribly hard. All right, so I know I've taken up a lot of your time, so I'll just summarize real quickly. I just want to go through the key points. The design features and functions of the existing AV system are not clearly understood by the village administration or the members of staff tasked to operate it. The existing system appears to be unnecessarily complex, intimidating and difficult to operate. The existing camera is inadequate, producing only low-res SD video with little visual appeal. The increased number of meeting participants require that the village deploy more microphones, but the wall-mounted patch bay supports only 6 inputs, although your mixer amp supports 8. As the village doesn't seek to interact with its audience or monetize local government meetings through pay-to-stream ticket sales, I don't see a clear reason or an overburdening reason to stream events live. There are over 1,000 franchise fee paying cable TV subscribers in the village, but only 21 tonight. I noticed a drop by 1. Subscribers to the village YouTube channel worldwide.
But there's also the USIA channel that's used by many people when they want to watch.
Okay.
Yeah,
Fair play.
Yeah, and
Not live.
I'm
Not live, right, because we
just-
currently have no live option.
Right.
I thought you were,
No.
I thought you were able to do it and you've done it before.
You are able to do it, and you must have done it before, because there are certain recordings on the village YouTube page that were streamed live.
I
And
think
it currently
Alex
does not
tested
work.
it, or,
Okay.
yeah, Alex tried,
so
yeah.
it needs
And
fixing.
you told us a while ago that we wouldn't have the bandwidth if several people were logged in through the
Okay.
village's website.
Right, that's a whole different animal. That if you are using the YouTube URL, no problem at all, because people are accessing the content delivery network. If you are actually embedding video from the DV recorder into the village's website, yeah, you haven't got the bandwidth.
Yeah, you told us that a while
Yeah,
ago.
but if that's how you're doing it, but if you're using the content delivery network, no problem.
So when it's getting very technical, so when she tested it the way she did, it's not the way that you're describing as the zero cost option.
I don't know, I can't speak of what's gone on in the past, I can only go from where I've got involved.
I think what you're saying is, yeah, you used your local network, you didn't go through.
Yep.
Right, so the problem you were both just describing is we tested a different way from the way that you're proposing. And we
Very
should try.
probably. If it's configured to go directly to the content delivery network, then it's absolutely accessible in real time on the village's website. It can be, the URL can be embedded in the live stream URL. No problem at all. All right.
On the 22 subscribers, I wouldn't say that's a fair assessment of viewers. I mean, I don't subscribe to any YouTube channels. I get too many emails when I do that, and I watch on all the different channels.
Fair. I completely understand that, but with respect, I will tell you the total number of views on the village's YouTube channel is actually less than the number of subscribers. You've had 1,290 views
Yeah,
worldwide.
there's a few
But-
anomalies that pop up, but I don't even want to get into the game of comparing people who watch it one way or the other. I'd like a
Right,
solution
but
that
it-
makes everybody access.
People-
Do both.
More,
Do both.
right, more
Do
people
both.
will watch it if it's available
All
through
right,
the internet.
so
So that's what I don't understand about
That's-
this comment about.
yeah, okay, look, I completely
Can I
understand.
ask my question?
I'm sorry.
You're saying there's no clear reason why these events should be streamed live. I don't understand that.
Well, at this present moment in time with the viewership that you've got.
Yeah, I don't.
No, but I think that's not.
I don't think that's defensible.
I think people.
Well, no, what I was trying to say, and the premise that I was presenting this on tonight, was my understanding, I have to say, that was certainly the end of the stick that I got, that my understanding that this was in replacement to, not in addition to, in replacement of, not in addition to, Channel 23, which is, in that instance, comparing apples with apples, oranges to oranges, it's not a viable proposition. But if you want to do it in addition to, in fact, I strongly recommend that you do. I strongly recommend it, but I suggest you use the no-cost option, and you don't spend any money to do it, because you don't need to.
Is there, so my understanding, and I really appreciate all these diagrams, I think these are super useful.
My pleasure.
So what was sold to us in terms of the Boxcast concept and the benefits of it is that it, in addition to streaming the meetings live or streaming them to YouTube or Channel 23, it would also help with making the archiving of those meetings easier.
Well,
Like that is one of the features that it provides.
I've gone back to looking at what they're talking about archiving, and they actually want to charge you 49 cents per recorded hour for every bit of material that remains on that server longer than an hour, 1 year. You'll find that actually covered in the report. Also, as I mentioned before, and I do know something of data lifecycle management, an archive is something that is taken offline. It is actually physically archived, yeah? It's like something printed out, put away in a file. It's like a disk burned and put away. It is not available online. Even if it's not accessed very frequently, if it's still online, that's not an archive, okay? So you've got immediate online storage, which is stuff you use every day. Then you've got nearline storage, which is stuff that's used occasionally, and offline or
We can use a different word other than
Yeah.
archive.
Well, archive, but you have to
How about
take a-
saved? So saved to YouTube?
But it would be saved to YouTube.
It would be.
It would be with what you've got if you send it up there. It would
So
be
if you
saved.
send it up there, it's saved to YouTube,
Yes.
and then a month after it was recorded and streamed live, you could go back.
Yes.
Yeah.
In perpetuity.
Right.
So
As long as YouTube exists, and I don't think they're going anywhere. They're owned by Google.
if we were to go with Boxcast, so that the archives were on their system and we decided to not use them,
They go away.
the archive, the
Yeah.
meetings go away.
It's all destroyed. So also.
But they would still be on YouTube.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
but you know,
but-
my experience, I agree with you that we should just DVD them as a backup. I mean, I
Sure.
don't know how much space we have, but my experience with backups is that you need local backups.
Agreed.
You never know when stuff is gonna break down.
It will. You just
So,
don't know when.
I mean, coming into this, I was like, oh, you gotta get rid of it. And then when you said that, I was like, wow, that's sort of breaking my own rule, which is you always need a local backup.
Yeah.
But you're saying you can save it from YouTube to create that local backup?
Yes.
You could.
But
It's-
that would
it's-
be more, well,
but
I don't know
it's-
if it would
it's-
be more work for us.
Yeah, it is another step because it's got to be physically.
Well, you're saying we don't
downloaded
even
from
need to
YouTube.
do it because we could continue to use the
Exactly.
existing DVD recorder that we have.
That would
Yeah.
be my recommendation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a easier.
Could you
route.
talk a little bit about what might be wrong perhaps with the VGA recorder?
What's wrong with it?
Yeah,
I just
why
think
is
it's
it-
not configured. I don't think there's anything wrong with it at
Okay,
all.
and how could you possibly, could we get a splitter in the wall so we could have 8 microphones?
You could, there's lots of options available, anything from a snake, a digital snake, an analog snake, replumbing that so it's got more. But if you're moving over to boundary microphones, depending on whether your requirement is for sound reinforcement, I think that was put in long before you started recording meetings. The actual mixer amp and the PA system is a separate thing. So it's been adapted to actually provide
Sure.
an audio feed.
Okay.
But yeah, there's lots of ways of improving that without spending a fortune.
Yeah, I think the
So-
complaints that I've heard are that you can't hear it. You
Right.
can't hear people speaking, and you can't see anything.
Right.
So, and you said that we wouldn't be able to, with the existing system that we have, we wouldn't be able to go to a more higher resolution HD.
The Epiphone recorder is actually HD capable. Completely.
So,
It's the camera is the weak link in the
So
chain.
you can buy a better camera and you could buy
You could.
additional mics. And
Absolutely.
I'm also a big proponent of the chair of the meeting needs to require anyone who wants to participate needs to speak into a mic.
It's not an unreasonable
no,
request.
not at all. And could these microphones, could we go with powered microphones as well, or
I'm sorry, I don't
Well,
what's the
Can these
question?
microphones be powered?
could they be?
They don't need to be
They don't
powered.
need-
They're dynamic
Because there's
microphones.
often this kind of motion, there's the sharing, there's,
Oh, could you replace these with a better omnidirectional microphone with better response? Absolutely,
Yeah.
but they cost.
yeah, well, but if someone's not hearing it, then it's worth the cost, so.
But I think it's often because, like, I've been at meetings where chairs are not requiring participants to speak into mics, and then you remind them again and again and again, and then they finally do it, and they don't even have the mics turned on.
Right.
So, part of it is like a culture that needs to be created. Like if we're spending time and effort to record meetings, everyone has to be on the same page.
Maybe
You're checking
we
to
need a
make
little
sure yours is
visual on
on.
the table.
One
Check
of-
your mic.
One of the
Speak into
things
your
I
mic.
would recommend, which is a really easy thing to fix to ensure that the microphones don't inadvertently get turned off, you'll notice that this little plate below it is
Yeah.
removable, turn the other way up, screw it back on, stops you turning the microphone
Right,
off.
yeah, that's a great idea.
So,
So it's just
So
always
they're
on.
always on.
it's always on.
Do it.
That has its own dangers.
Yeah, but that's probably
Oh.
good too.
Transparency, Mr. Mayor.
Joe laughs when KT realizes that. Joe knows KT.
An observation and a question?
Yes.
So you estimated that all actions from start to finish with regarding broadcasting and saving meetings and uploading them and all the stuff is about 40 minutes of time?
Yes.
And 22 minutes of that 40 minutes is setting up microphones and breaking them down?
Yes, probably more.
So no matter what we do, we're stuck with that 22 minutes?
There are ways of making life easier, probably, but not without expense. And I mean, task me with the job of finding a better way, and there probably is a better way of being able to connect microphones without having to, run cables into the rat's nest under the table.
Could we develop input on the table itself, so we just plug in that, and the table's...
Well, that's what a snook is, basically.
Yeah,
So you mentioned a couple times what would need to happen with the equipment we have, it would need to be configured.
Just really
Who
configure.
does that and how hard is it and how long is it and?
That was
I have no
Yeah.
personal experience of it, but I did download the manual for the box, and I'm quite willing to have a poke at it if you want me to. That's certainly within the remit of the support that the public access coordinator, I guess, provides. So it could definitely be done
So
So
when you
we
say
could
it's a
test
no-cost option, it could be done.
for no
without a big-
cost.
Okay. I
All
guess
right, we have
that's-
a meeting next Wednesday. Can we test it by then?
I don't know.
I would have to have access to it.
Can't answer that question.
I think if we
Well,
shoot
Anton,
we shoot for
you've come
once a year,
to-
that might be a little bit-
Okay.
You've come
I
to-
don't get it. I don't have a sense of the complexity.
No, I don't know
That's
it's
why I
complex,
was
it's
throwing
just,
that out
it's
there.
it's the holidays and schedules
Yeah,
and.
whatever.
Well, things don't work well.
Bob can answer, KT.
But if Anton wants to come to Village Hall, I can open the cabinet for him, and I'm
I
very
think we
comfortable.
have to have a network connection to it using a PC.
Yep. It also, the other thing I didn't mention, which is in the report, is that there is actually an iPhone app for the Epiphone as well. So, but that said, I don't know if you can see the big red button right there that's flashing.
Yeah.
That comes with the Epiphone. That is the single thing you need to press to start the recording and streaming process, and press it to stop it. That's so you don't need to configure anything once it's configured. The rest of it should be automatic.
So you're saying that you have the manual that we...
I do, and we can have a hunt through. If you want us to start exploring this, I guess I'm speaking for Bob. He's
No, I would,
but
the
but
main
we can
thing
have
I've
a look
had
at
a
it.
problem with this whole system is we've never had support. We've never had a manual, there was nothing, I didn't even know there was a manual online.
We all inherited this system.
Yeah.
I understand.
Thank you, last board.
We're all in the same boat. Let's put an oar in and see if we can't row in the same direction.
Live in
So,
one-
Bob, do we need our IT person to help us?
That would
with-
probably be the best.
So,
best
do
thing.
we want to just get Brian here with Anton and see?
Well,
Yeah.
we have each other's email address, so we might as well start open a dialogue and see if we can't resolve the issue. You know?
Yeah, we have Brian's contact, so we can...
See
You're
what
okay
can be
with
done.
that?
And then, yeah, stream away. It's going to cost nothing.
So are you confident, because I don't know the details of why things have broken down for Alex and Christina in the past, and why the process, let me rephrase that, which steps in the process
Right.
caused trouble? I'm
There's
a
a-
documentation girl, so if
Yep. No,
if all this the whole brought was that we have some documentation and we've identified a better path, then that's awesome. But I just want to make sure that if we're just adding to what we have. We've already clearly identified, this all started because things were breaking down and not happening, so.
Get it, yeah, there's a bag of hurt, really, absolutely. So, on page 30 is a list of recommendations, not least of which some of these need to be done sooner than others. The first thing is make the whole thing a lot less intimidating, which can be done simply by good cable management, tidying up and moving stuff that people don't need to use, like cable modulator, out of the way. Let's get it in the rack, you know, and so it's, and if we do good cable management, things aren't going to get accidentally pulled, fall over, get disconnected. You know, nobody means to be.
Because we had that problem recently,
Right.
where there was the
Something
system
got
wasn't-
turned off and we couldn't figure out which one, right? Or,
Yeah, something was not plugged in.
yeah.
Yeah, the other issue was there's 3 remotes in there, which is unnecessary. At least one of those can be immediately eliminated, and maybe with a programmable remote, you just get down to one.
Well, I'm very supportive of the idea of having Anton and Bob and Brian take a look at what we have and try to clean it up, and we'll see if you can improve what we have.
Okay, we may need a little budget for some cable management stuff. Not much, you know, but
I imagine you'll know what that is once you look more closely.
absolutely. Yeah.
So I'd like to set the goal of streaming the second meeting in January. Give you guys plenty of time, get past the holidays, you know, make sure that everything's double checked and backed up. You think that's a realistic goal to set?
It's a perfectly reasonable thing to expect of your public access TV coordinator. Right? It's his wheelhouse, yeah, absolutely. I think that's something you should be doing. And for my part, I'm quite happy to get involved as best I can.
Well, I think we're lucky that you live within our community and have this background in this type of work, so.
This is so awesome. This is really great. Thank
You're very,
you.
very welcome. And it's a pleasure.
Thank you for bringing awareness to the village board.
And thank you for your presentation.
You're very welcome. And please have a read through this. And if you need me to come back and explain anything next meeting, I'm super happy to do so. Okay.
And anytime, even short notice, if you guys want to come, and even without Bob, if you have a window of time, you want to take a look at the closet, I'll open the door for you whenever you want.
Appreciate it greatly. All right. Thank you so much.
Yep.
You did it.
Okay, so we moved NBR up to next. So I can share that when we had our workshop meeting on NBR, we discussed some concepts around roof decks, and I was tasked with running some of the ideas by Bryant. I wrote up some notes and I shared it with Bryant, and he was comfortable with, you know, the concepts that we were floating. You know, they're basically just reinforcing a lot of the existing New York State fire prevention and building codes, where you could only have, you know, you could never surpass the maximum allowable people in the space. And then I think what was unique about what we were considering is that we were going to require that any use of a roof deck be limited to the residential tenants, and that the customers of the commercial tenants, you know, that's not what the roof decks were intended for. And then we added an additional stipulation that the roof decks had to always remain open. They wouldn't be designed for even a residential tenant to, let's say, have the space all to themselves for a party. Like, the idea was that the function is to provide communal outdoor space for its tenants. And Brian thought it made a great deal of sense to limit any lighting that was on a roof deck, that it couldn't be higher than 3 feet off of the ground, and the fixtures had to be pointed down. Depending on the number of occupants that would be allowed, you would need two methods of egress from the roof. And the other unique concept that we floated was this idea of, well, let's limit the amount of roof deck space to 65% of the available space, with the remainder to be used for mechanicals or non-roof deck area, and then that remainder should be positioned so it functions as a buffer between the roof deck and area residential communities. And Brian thought that all made sense and jived with his understanding of how New York State building codes would work. So that was my homework. So I think our intention is for the meeting that we have, the first meeting in December, is that we're going to try to have an agenda with fewer agenda items, including NBR, so we can drill down and continue with that discussion.
Yep, that sounds good.
I'd like everybody to think about a timeline, like as what Don just did for the other project. Let's do some backwards planning and say we want to finalize what we want to send to public hearing by X date, which means we need to accomplish finalizing this document by that date and know how many meetings we think that needs to occur. And we don't have to answer that question now, but we should talk about it next week and just sort of plan out where we think we're going to be at in order to get this finalized and sent to public hearing.
That sounds like a good idea. I don't think that we're really far off.
I think we're pretty close.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I think it's just, I like timelines.
Well,
Do you want to set a goal of completing that by the end of the year?
Sounds good.
This is 2 meetings. If we have to have a special meeting in the meantime, that gives us 3 meetings.
Yep, I like that
Okay.
idea.
Let's get it done.
I'm okay with that. So I took on the task of doing the edits on the first round. I don't know if someone else wants to volunteer.
You don't want to do it, is what you're telling us?
I just don't have a lot of time.
I'll do it.
Right now.
Fine.
Thank you.
Okay, and I will.
I'll give you my
What's
copy
today?
again.
Wednesday, so, yeah, so I'll make sure that we actually have that document in our packet beforehand.
Tim, if you have other, like mayoring stuff to do, I wouldn't mind doing it.
Mayor and stuff?
Mayoring stuff, yeah. This sounds like more mechanical stuff, so just put it out there. You happy to take that off your plate? Oh,
I sent,
Joe, you want to come up and speak into a mic?
okay, I probably could.
No, it's not about whether we.
We'll
can
make
do
sure
it.
it's on.
Listen, I spent so much time trying to get people to speak into microphones, so I have fun.
You know how it works.
I know how it works. I sent a memo to Dennis and Don before your workshop, while I was across the pond, that clarified how the parking ratio went, so that might be helpful to send to the rest of the board. You could just it clarifies how the parking workshop.
That little graphic thing?
Yes, and we had talked about that during the workshop where I was present before, and I had said, I'll add that. I don't know if that got to you, but that I can send it to everybody too. So that you could just put in that little piece rather
yeah,
than,
I don't think at the workshop meeting you're referencing, we got to parking, that wasn't one of the items we got to.
right.
Well, we did
We did,
discuss
actually.
parking ratios.
But I think that,
But why don't we
I
just,
think it's two separate things, but yeah, that's definitely something that
yeah,
we
I think you were
asked for.
talking about kind of the interrelation between the commercial and the residential, because there's that matrix,
Right.
which is really
Yes.
Yeah,
clever,
it's
so, yeah.
The paragraph I'm talking about explained how the matrix worked,
Yeah.
and it gave an example, which we had talked about when I was at the workshop meeting, and you said, could you give us an example? And you might have written it down, but you know.
Yeah, no, I don't have the graphics in here, so I can't remember if what we decide for the parking here impacts what the numbers will be in such a
Okay.
graphic.
But
I
it would
suspect
still-
that it will,
Mhm.
but having the framework or template of explaining if, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we still need it.
So you can pick and choose from this, but it clarifies some of the issues that we had talked about at the workshop I was at, but wasn't able to submit to you on paper.
So recirculate that. And then what I would like to do is, so when we have NBR as an agenda item for that first December meeting,
Yeah.
let's make the first topic be parking and that ratio. So, you know, we can anticipate diving headfirst into a discussion about NBR parking.
Okay.
That's
So
the
I'll
first.
send you that
Great.
memo, because I think it'll clarify some things that were still a little,
Perfect, thanks.
Thank
you
you.
know, not explained fully.
Okay.
And if there's anything else you'd like me to prepare for that next meeting, you want me to be there at the meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll also,
If there are any
once
other
I
issues-
update this, this draft of the proposed law, which is just a redraft of what you shared with us, I'll make sure you get that
Okay.
the same time that the board gets it, so you can be checking it out in anticipation of that meeting too.
Okay. And just as an aside on the material you were discussing before, because we had issues with the reporting about our meetings, and I think one of the key things that happened is that the DVD wasn't finalized, and just as the gentleman explained, if you didn't finalize a DVD, it was unreadable. So there were unreadable DVDs, so some of the meetings were lost. And so if you could have like a checklist,
Yeah, let me show
just
you.
a
It's really
simple
beautiful.
checklist of like, do this.
And that's
do
in
this, do
bold
this.
here, and
Yeah.
I already underlined it.
But if a checklist is like
Yeah,
on
and
the
he put that in
door.
his
We've had
recommendations.
checklists on that door, and I think we might be like in a really good spot though, because Anton's presentation here was
Right.
the clearest discussion I have ever heard about what's in
I
that
pleaded
closet.
to be taught how to do the meetings.
I think Anton's the person to help us, so we'll see.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah, and if we do the YouTube thing, if we fall through on the finalized part, we're gonna have a backup there. So we have redundancy built into the proposed solution.
And to my colleagues, there's a gentleman from MVP who's been here for 45 minutes and we're not at item 4 yet. Can you move that up?
Yeah, come on
Is
up.
that who you are?
Great. I apologize, I thought the meeting was at 7:30.
I didn't know. Sure.
I actually was interested in the item 4, and I wanted to, you know, impart any help I could with that
Do
decision.
you want to just point the mic towards,
Oh, sorry.
yeah.
So I'm Paul Stroh, thank you, I'm with Mid-Hudson VIP, and there's a note on the agenda to renew MVP, but also to switch from my agency, which is here in the village, to Ulster Savings Bank, and I just wanted to see if there was anything I could impart to help you guys with that decision.
Well, the memo that we received from our treasurer is that the way we currently pay MVP is the funds are wired.
Yep.
So this switch from Mid-Hudson VIP to Ulster Savings
Yep.
would eliminate that wire cost?
There's two things that happen. The village has an HRA, a health reimbursement account. And what they do is they take a high deductible plan, which lowers the premium, and we set that up for them. And then we also set up a health reimbursement account. And the money is drawn as people use it to pay for claims. It's sort of a self-funding mechanism. If the member does not use that money, then that stays with the village. The way MVP typically sets up that account is they get access to your bank account and draw the money electronically when a claim is made. Then they, in turn, pay the provider of the service, so the member is not involved. What the village had said, and I'm taking this from what I've heard from the treasurer, is that they didn't want MVP to have access to their account. And so,
When you say their account, whose account?
the village's account.
Yep.
And so, by saying they're going to go away from their normal process, they, they've created this process, well, there's a wire transfer and Roseanne has to go to the bank and it takes an hour and a half. My suggestion was, well, why don't we open up a second account that MVP can draw from? We'll just fund it to the extent that it needs to be funded to pay the monthly claim. And MVP sends the village a report of that each month, and that would alleviate the wire transfer fee and time consumption.
Is there a reason that municipalities don't just send a check?
They don't do it based on check, no.
It's part of this.
And I handle the town's insurance as well, and the town, they give access to their account and the funds are drawn, so it's.
Is part of this because we're kind of unique in that we're using a high deductible plan, but what the village does is they pay for our staff's high deductibles? Is that part of?
It's not that unique. Well, a lot of companies and municipalities are doing that.
Okay.
The town of Gardner does it, the town of New Paltz does it, you guys do that. So it's.
But does that?
It's not unique. What's unique is that for some reason the village said, and I don't know, I'm not privy to this, but for some reason the village said, we don't want MVP to be able to draw the funds out of their account as an electronic transfer, and that's how 99% of the accounts are set up with that carrier.
So your suggestion is let's just open a second account?
Yeah, open a second account.
Or answer the question as to why we said no to doing it the way that 99% of the time.
Right.
So Alberta,
Why add that if?
Can you ask, because Nancy probably has a method to her madness, is exactly what I'm anticipating. Can you ask Nancy why we do it this way, why we forbid MVP from drawing directly from the village's account? And if Nancy has a reason and she continues to be uncomfortable with that, what about the possibility of creating a second account as Paul is suggesting? Okay, so, and send that note to Nancy, CC me, and then we'll go from there.
So we're not going to make any decisions, so thanks for coming and illuminating us on this.
I have a secondary concern about changing the HRA administration to Ulster Savings Bank. And that's in regard to the member. One of the reasons why we like to set up the HRA administration with MVP is they have direct-to-provider reimbursement. So they'll take that money that is due to the provider and send it right to the provider, and it alleviates the member from having to get a check, cash it, send it back to the provider that provided the service. So typically, the old way that HRAs were administered was that the money would go directly to the subscriber, your employee, in the form of a check, and then they'd have to reimburse that doctor. The other thing is that the IRS requires you to keep substantiation of those claims, and so you need to keep records of all of your services. By changing that process to MVP's process, the member's kind of out of the loop. Whenever they just use their card, the money goes to the doctor. It's a very clean process. So I know Roseanne had some concerns about having the members getting checks, and then, it's their responsibility then to actually turn over that money. It's just another step in the process. So in terms of ease of administration for your employees, I would think the MVP system is better. But my
MVP system?
Well, the MVP HRA. See, the HRA is administered by MVP as well as the health benefits. My understanding is if you change to Ulster Savings Bank, they're going to be administering that HRA. So, yes.
As opposed to MVP.
As opposed to MVP.
So it has nothing to do with Mid-Hudson VIP administering.
We don't administer the money. We're the broker. We set up the process. Ulster Savings Bank has a brokerage agency, but they're also a bank. So I think what they're talking about is administering the HRA themselves, rather than having MVP administer the HRA. Outside of this wire issue, if we could clarify that, I still think the administration of the HRA process is going to be easier by using the carrier to administrate it.
Alberta,
rather than-
did you catch the distinction that Paul was trying to make?
I'm not sure I understand the process. With
Okay.
the one, it would go from the bank to the doctor themselves and basically cut out the employee having to receive a check, cash the check, and then send the check back. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
so this is, tell me if I'm understanding this correctly. I think what you're suggesting is that if we're using MVP the way we are currently using it, then it's a more streamlined process, and any HRA reimbursements just goes directly between, there's no
MVP
checks
and the
being
provider.
submitted to the participants in the plan.
That's correct.
So what you're concerned about is that if Ulster Savings administers the HRAs, then there's an additional step,
Yes.
right? So that's what we want to ask Nancy and Roseanne if they have concerns about that. And is that a reason to not use Ulster Savings as the administrator?
Right.
Okay.
And the
So
other,
that's
the other is, I guess begs the question to me is that the only reason? Because really the rates are community rated. It's not that I have a different rate than Ulster Savings has a different rate, rate for the health insurance premium. So is that the only reason you're considering changing from our agency to a different agency? If that is the only reason, again, my recommendation would be let's fix the process so that the funds can be electronically taken out of maybe a separate account.
Well, that was
Yeah.
the first
Right.
conversation that we had. So we've got that covered.
Yep.
So, Alberta, when you send this note, can you address it to Dennis, Roseanne, and Nancy? Because I want to make it clear that we want Dennis's opinion, because he's our board member who probably knows the most about health insurance.
Sure.
So- Okay, thanks.
Good, thank you.
So 2 nights in a row.
There you go.
I was gonna say, weren't you here last night?
Yeah, I was early and then I was late.
I'm wondering why our village board was talking about public access issues and nothing else last night.
Terrific. Thank you.
So good to see you again.
Yep.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, so the next item is we have the Millbrook Preserve rec plan and memorandum of agreement. So we received a memo from our planner.
Did you skip two?
Do we do Corey?
No, we didn't do
I'm gonna go
Corey.
into exec session to talk about Corey, sorry. So
Okay.
let's put that later, at the end. So,
So.
Millbrook Preserve, rec plan and MOA.
I only just spoke to Will, the lawyer, at about 5 o'clock. He said, so David Gilmore provided a memo, and we were waiting on Will's feedback. Will said he's not gonna add anything further. He's good with Dave's email. I looked at the stuff a few weeks ago or a month ago at this point, but I was sort of waiting for Will, so I don't feel really comfortable voting on it until I can look at it.
Well, we also have to, did anyone have any strong opinions about some of the suggestions that David was
Right, like,
making? It felt like a fair amount of it was kind of just administrative and just tightening up language.
yeah, I don't
Did
think
anyone-
it was,
Yeah. So let's put that on our first meeting in December agenda, that we're going to respond specifically to David's
right, and just so we're
feedback.
clear, that's it. We're not getting anything from Will. He's good with what Dave said. and-
Yeah, that's useful, that we now know that
Yeah.
Will thought that David's memo was useful.
Yep.
Okay, we go on to 5. So we have a resolution, this is where we would, and we've discussed this before, it seems like this is just an additional layer that the folks who are helping, or are involved in the Mid-Hudson Streetlight Consortium need. So I'd like to move this resolution.
Second.
Or any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I motion that we move the approval of Bell Copier contract. The previously considered version had the wrong numbers. The price change is 55 cents per month.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You want to fill us in on security deposit return law?
So we got from Will today some additional language for some definitions. I sent out, since I'm again going to suggest that we punt this to next week so people can check out Will's edition. And I did keep highlighted in this most recent version the one section that I still have some questions and concerns about, which is the good faith versus documentation issue, but like NBR, I'd like to put it on next week's. I would like to give us a deadline of sending wherever we're at to public hearing even as soon as next week. I feel like this one is ready unless other people.
Okay.
You want to have a public hearing next week?
No, we're not setting a public hearing.
Say that we have a document that we're ready to go to public hearing, to finalize the document to be able to trigger that next step next week.
Yeah, I had a question about a termination of tenancy as well. It was a little technical to my reading, that's all.
Remember that this needs to be written in legalese and we can translate in the supporting documentation, but
Sure.
please email Will if you have questions that he can answer.
Thank you.
Okay, so next item is the proposed 2/12/23 site plan review amendments.
Yeah, Will and I are going back and forth trying to find time to talk about a couple of minor adjustments to a couple of the paragraphs. Once that's accomplished, then we'll get it out to the planning board if they're requesting it. So
Great.
that should be wrapped up this week.
Okay.
I apologize, it's just been crazy trying to figure out a time.
Okay, so the next item was, go ahead.
Yeah,
Do you have questions?
Yeah, I do. I guess I'm struck by the position of this proposal toward pre-application reviews, and it seems to codify and encourage them, and it's not. I'm not as comfortable as I want to be with that process. Yeah, I think it's great that developers or people who have projects or builders, just individuals, it's great they interact with the building department. I think it's fine for them to interact with the mayor and have discussions, but I don't think there should be private interaction between the actual planning board and people who will later come before them in official capacity. It kind of strikes me as regulators having conversations with the people they're going to regulate offline before the formal process. So I'm really uncomfortable with the whole approach toward pre-application review.
Which language in particular?
Well, I redlined much of pages 12.4 and 12.5 on the long document submitted to us. And it has to do with just pre-application review. My questions are there minutes? Is there a video? Is there an official record of the pre-application review? It is possible to apply for and receive approval for waivers from submission requirements for full site plan applications as a result of this pre-application process. And I just think every part of a process that involves a planning board, needs to be official and needs to have minutes and documentation, need to be public. So I don't think there's any bad intent here. So I please don't want to get anyone's nose out of joint. But I just think the whole concept of a pre-application process with the planning board before there's any public discourse with the planning board, it just creates, it makes me uncomfortable.
So when it said the planning board, to me, I thought this was at a public meeting. So maybe we need to just, and maybe I'm
Yeah,
wrong.
pre-apps are at public meetings.
Yeah, so, maybe we need explicit language that says that, because to me, when you say planning board, you're talking about a quorum, so it's in public at meetings.
Mhm.
But I don't see, it's like no harm, no foul to add language that says something. I don't know.
Well,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I could be wrong. It's my understanding, and again, I could be wrong, so, I'm not, it's my understanding there are times when people who may have projects in front of the planning board have direct interaction with people on the planning board, and the planning board chair, to find out, what are you gonna feel about this, what's your approach gonna be about that? And I'm very uncomfortable with that process.
Okay, I think that's
That's a
separate,
different
that's
thing, though.
separate.
That's
Pre-app
not pre-app.
is
This is
an
what
actual,
I was getting from this.
the
Maybe I
pre-app
misunderstood.
is an actual thing where you pay a fee and then you go before the planning board. So, to go before the planning board, you need to have a complete application. So this is a way for an applicant to sit in front of the planning board without a complete application.
Well, as long as there's minutes in the video, I'm comfortable with the
Yeah,
process.
this is,
And I actually think it will reduce the need for those sub-quorum
Yeah.
conversations that occur, because applicants will like the formal process of hearing about how things are gonna roll in public, Because I think it's also in their interest for it to be public and in writing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I think a lot of what we're trying to do is to, clarity, right? For applicants, for the planning board, to not go down very far and expensive roads to find out that interpretations were not as they were thought, from either just reading it on your own or talking to individual members. I mean, I really like the idea of formalizing the pre-application so it can get rid of some of the unknowns that seem to turn into long, lonely, expensive roads.
No, I really appreciate the clarification, and I think, as I said before, I think if we have a clear language in our zoning, it's right there in writing for someone to see.
Right, well,
They can go to the building department for clarification. Am I reading this right? How do you interpret this? But I guess I'm curious if I'm lonely in my discomfort with offline conversations before the formal planning board process begins. That's what I'm concerned about. And
I think that very concern is what triggered doing these pre-application things.
again, as long as they're in
Right?
public.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's
I would
my
agree.
interpretation of
we're
that.
trying to save applicants time so they can actually get in front of the planning board and have a public conversation to see, if their application will, how it may be reviewed.
Okay, well, for the
Yeah.
third time, as long as it's public.
Yeah,
there's
there's
no- it's on
a
video.
fee, there's like
Okay.
a part of the formal process, so it's just
Appreciate the
providing them
clarification.
without having to do everything that would be required of a full application.
Okay.
So you're gonna
Yes.
circle back with this. Okay, so the next item was this proposed home occupation code overhaul amendment. Did anyone want to comment on that?
Look pretty straightforward.
Okay, I agree. I think it is pretty straightforward. So Alberta and I were brainstorming this morning about this and some other tweaks, and we kind of came up with this idea of taking, a few laws and putting them all together with the anticipation of passing like 5 laws at the same time that are all just kind of perfunctory, as opposed to like one-off public hearing. You still need individual public hearings, but let's wait until we have a collection of kind of like 5 no-brainer laws.
We need a public hearing to get rid of a parking spot?
I don't
That's a
know
code
about
change?
that. Yeah, probably,
So
yeah.
then
Well,
the
is
answer
it?
would be yes, right? I don't know.
We're talking about the home occupation.
Oh, I'm
code
sorry, I
overhaul.
thought you were on parking spot,
No.
sorry.
What I'm suggesting is that for number 9, this proposed home occupation code overhaul amendment, is that we hold off on scheduling a public hearing until we get some other perfunctory type laws that we want to change.
Yeah, that's fine.
So just, we're going to just start collecting a few of those and then do those together.
Sure.
Okay, I'm still not really clear on what's happening with that law to begin with, the how or the why, but, yeah.
I think it's really just changing some language.
I know there was something that triggered it,
Yeah.
so I don't have to understand every little bit. It's
Right.
okay.
All right, so the next item is this removal of a parking spot in front of 62 Main Street. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. Alberta, do you have any idea if we remove any village parking spot, is that a code change? Or how did we do that?
I'm not positive.
Okay, so that's
So we'll
something we
find
need to
out.
find out.
When we create a handicap spot, that's a code change, so I would have to
I was
imagine it'd be
thinking of that
a similar,
too.
similar process.
But maybe
Similar
not,
rules.
'cause it's, yeah, we can just find out.
Well, definitely the handicap spots are listed in the code.
Right.
Right.
I don't know that the other 262 village spots are listed in the code. I do not believe that they are.
Okay, point taken.
But then again,
Well, we'll find out.
I actually do think it may be code.
I mean,
but on
are
this
people generally
topic-
in support, so we should find out?
Well, on this topic, I wanted to float two things. Because when we first discussed this several months ago, Dennis threw out the idea of like, well, why don't we consider a compact car spot in that location?
Yeah.
Or like I was in a community recently and I saw like a motorcycle only spot. So you could have a smaller spot in the same location. So that's one thing to consider. Is that an option? Or maybe we just get rid of it altogether. The other thing that I would really like the Transportation Implementation Committee to do when they're considering eliminating spots is for them to also look around and see if they can find places where we can add spots. Like I did this today. I met with our deputy superintendent Nick, and we went and looked at Platico Avenue, because if you just look at the area in front of Dan and Agnes's house, you know, next to the tea room, if you could probably add 2 spots to the south of where it currently says, you know, no more parking. And, you know, there are.
Although we need to find out why that was put there to begin with.
Well, Nick and I were talking about that, and he, you know,
We'll find out.
yeah, but he has feelings as to, you know, why you wouldn't add 4 spots there, and it seemed like he got comfortable with the idea of adding 2. And then there's directly across the street, there's a curb cut in front of the wooded area of the property that's owned by the Sam Six folks. You could easily put a spot there, but then you would probably have to put a curb in. You can't really have people park next to a former curb cut. But, you know, we don't want to necessarily install a curb cut
Yeah,
anywhere
that's a
either.
lot of money.
That's expensive. So I really want to, you know,
Yeah.
if you're the liaison, can you
Well,
ask them to?
Sure, well, they're, in this instance, it was a 62 Main, is they've done a lot of observation and research, and they've seen trucks darting across the middle, you know, the middle line, and the thought is even, and I talked with Dennis about this, he seemed to agree with what the committee was saying, that, you know, subcompact is a, you know, a suggestion, but not the end all. And how do you actually police it? What constitutes a subcompact car? Is that, you know, is a Corolla compact?
Well, I think you would police it by making the spots smaller,
Yeah.
painting, grinding out the lines that are
But
there and painting
even
them.
even with a smaller car, there's visibility issues, that's just such a bottleneck of an area. So that's
Yeah.
what they were recommending. That would help. And I've noticed myself that if a car is parked there, if they're not completely against the curb, just out just a few inches, in fact, that cars and trucks need to swerve over into, you know, onto the yellow line, the double yellow line. And I certainly will bring back to them that, let's look for other parking spots around town. I think that's a great suggestion.
Okay.
Do we have a map with all our parking spots on it?
Yes, we have, when I said 262, I wasn't joking. We have
Right, but I didn't know if that was an
262
inventory in a
metered
spreadsheet or
spots.
like you have a map,
Both,
a visual
yeah,
map.
both.
And sidebar, Tim, you mentioned Sam Six. I noticed the name on their building has changed. Did they, are they
They
still
got
there?
bought.
Okay.
Yeah, it's,
Arcos.
Arcos is the parent company, but there's essentially no management change.
Okay. We've
It's
done
just
some
us.
partnering with them, I just want to know if they were still around.
Yep, it's still them.
Okay.
And we're still working with them on them acquiring about 1,800 square feet of that our, I think it was our former administration, pre-KT and Build, where we were selling 1,800 square feet of our parking lot to them for $25,000. And believe it or not, their attorneys are still doing something. And I spoke with Will again today about how that's proceeding.
How's that go?
Yeah, everything takes way too long.
Glacial.
Okay, so let's find out how we actually legally remove spots. And then, without Dennis here, I suggest we
Yeah.
postpone item 12, waste RFP update, rec fee process for planning and village boards. Did you guys want to add anything?
Yeah, we got a very long email from the head of the building department, Brian, and I think he was seeming to feel that it was very difficult to put together a one-pager, because if you are doing this option, it's all these rules. If you're doing option B, but I think within that email are the elements of something we could put together. It may not be a one-pager, it may be three one-pagers. If you have this sort of project, this is the procedure. If you have this sort of project, it's this. But I think the elements it was very, complete and comprehensive work product you put together, and I think that's something that we can use. It's a question of who clerks it into the documents, and I'm happy to take a whack at that.
Okay, so do we want to talk about that at our next meeting? I'm making a list of agenda items for what I would like our first meeting in December to be, in that we have fewer agenda items, but we'll spend more time on them. So should we add that to that meeting? I have 4 things right now, if we add rec.
So what do you got?
I got NBR, I got security deposit law, and Millbrook Reserve.
Yep,
So 4th item would be rec fee.
yep.
Well, in theory, if I'm able to put together something, show it by Brian, he's comfortable with it, it would just be bringing it to the board for comment and approval. So it shouldn't be, if it's already gone through me and Brian a couple times, and
You mean just approving the document?
yeah. So I don't
But
think.
then we would need to, sorry.
We don't need a
Workshop or
workshop.
something.
Okay, I
Anyway,
guess I'm
I don't think it'd
confused
be a
about what
timely-
this
a timely
document
dis-
is.
a time
I
consuming
just want to
discussion.
make an observation though, and I understand that things need to be precise and detailed. It just seems to me, just by the way you described it, it indicates that maybe we need to simplify it a little bit if it's that complicated. Maybe that's part of the problem.
And the other sidebar, I just want to make sure, we'd asked, Bill and I met with Brian, we'd asked if there's great confidence that all the current projects in front of the planning board are aware and have made arrangements to take care of the recreation fees. He couldn't give a definitive yes, that we are secure in that area. So we want to look to the future, but I think we also want to look to the present and make sure that, and I guess, so who's in charge of that? Who do I follow up with? Who's asked so I keep on top of to see if that's happened?
Yeah, so let's have a rec fee discussion.
Yeah,
and,
these are all, yeah, that's, but yeah.
Don's gonna tighten up some of the suggestions and language that Brian shared, and Don will report out on that at the December meeting, and it'll be something we'll talk about. Okay?
Okay.
Next, authorization of mayor's signature on shared service agreement between Town of Esopus and Village of New Paltz regarding highway, non-highway, specialty equipment, or skilled personnel. So this is just a shared service agreement. The thinking is that this shared service agreement was vetted by a few different municipalities, and the idea is that it's supposed to be a model. Like if we were to have an agreement with other municipalities on a more official basis. So that's why it was created, and we just received the document from Esopus, so now we would have this official agreement between Village of New Paltz and Esopus.
So moved.
Second,
No,
all in
second.
favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next item.
I'm sorry, who seconded that?
I did.
Who motioned for that one?
Done. Okay, item 15, water sourcing procedures via Environmental Policy Board.
Yeah, we had a meeting last evening. This was not typed up till this afternoon, so I'm not expecting any action on this, but this is the current version of that I'm hoping we can approve in the near future. Just to give everyone an idea, the black font is the original version before any modifications. The red font is changes made by this board in earlier discussions, and the blue font is essentially, we were given a request to add specifics and milestones and numerics, and that's what this is an attempt to do.
Okay, so let's,
So we'll check it out. We could do this next week,
yeah,
too.
let's put this on the next.
The list
agenda.
grows.
Yep.
But thank you for doing that.
Didn't we have a different name for this besides drilling SOP? Is that-
Well,
It says water sourcing procedures on the
I think
agenda.
we were differentiating the resolution that we already passed as calling that policy and calling this procedure.
Water sourcing procedure.
Yeah, well,
So-
that's what it says here, water sourcing procedures.
All right, that's what it'll say in the next version.
I'm gonna,
Okay, so KT, you got a password, so you're working to
yeah, and
fix that
actually, so Josh worked on it today. We finally got the password, and he did a bunch of stuff, but forgive my lack of technical lexicon, but something to the effect of now Google has to re-index.
Yeah.
So we can slowly, if it worked what he did, you can slowly see the changes. And I Googled it late in the day today, and it looks different already. It still has the town one coming up first and second, but it doesn't have the Facebook coming up. So something's happening.
And wait, what does it say? Oh, it does have Facebook right there. It says
But-
Village of New Paltz.
But the village, but ours, it used to come up with the town Facebook one.
It also has
first.
Village of New Paltz.
Yeah,
Eco.
so there's some cycles or processes that Google needs to respond to whatever he did. So it looks like we've made some strides and we'll
Okay.
continue to monitor it. So.
So maybe put
hopefully
that
that's
on-
good news.
Do you want to just want to report out on
Sure.
that for the second December meeting?
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, I should know by next week if.
Yeah, but we can't keep, the idea of this first December meeting is to have fewer items.
Right. Okay, that's fine, I don't care.
Okay.
Hopefully I can just say, yeah, it's fixed.
If it's fixed, you can
Right.
tell us that. If it's
Right, if it's not,
anything
we'll-
else,
yeah.
let's not discuss it at the
That
first
works.
December meeting.
I have a quick update on the Pride stuff.
Okay.
So we have narrowed down the means by which we would construct a Pride crosswalk or Pride crosswalks. In front of the DPW right now are three options that they're evaluating. One is the use of thermoplastic. The other is the use of pigment in cement. It's pretty easy to dye cement and use colored cement to do this. And the third option is kind of creative. It's the possibility of brightly colored bricks, which would require a potter. I know a potter who is extremely experienced and willing to do it. So we'll be meeting with the DPW on Friday to see what their preference is, which will then allow us to begin costing things. We now know, we have the measurements of the crosswalks we're looking at. Once we have the material, we can put together some estimates of cost. Had a conversation with Jeff Rindler and Dan Torres will be joining that conversation to discuss fundraising. We are planning to fundraise beginning early in the year, but first we need the numbers. Lastly, we are at the point where the Department of Transportation has now formally said we cannot do crosswalks at Starbucks or at the middle school. They cited that crosswalks are governed by federal law and they don't want to run afoul of the Federal Highway Administration, which sounds like either the truth or a very creative way to make us go away. So one of the things Dan Torres had offered to help with was to escalate and go over the head of some of the DOT people, but we needed to make sure we spoke to the local people before we went to people like our local representatives, our senators and representatives from the state. So that will be the next step. Now that we've gone through channels to try to go outside of channels. So
the plan is to go to Senator Bonasek and Assemblyman Cahill?
Yeah. And the prize, what we're looking for is to do this on a main street or a side to Main Street, the Chase Bank to Starbucks crosswalk. But there is comfort as a fallback position if we are rejected ultimately to use the crosswalk out here in front of Village Hall. So that's the...
Which one?
Well, I was thinking of that one, Jeff was thinking of that one, or either one, do one on a local street.
So one of the ones on Platicille
On
or
Platicille.
Hasbro, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The
And the
parade
one-
goes down.
Well, the one up there is
here.
kind of like the finish line for the parade, so he was thinking that might be a really good place to have it.
Oh, the one that goes from
So
our
not at
property
the
to
top of the
Hasbro.
hill, the one,
That's the one I was thinking of, he was suggesting, yeah, one of the other ones.
the one that goes to Hasbrook from the
Yeah,
parking lot.
yeah.
Yeah, that's usually the path of the parade.
Yeah, so
So,
that would be
yeah.
the finish line, if it was a pride crosswalk, it would be a really symbolic thing. But again, we're still going for the state highway.
Okay.
But if we get rejected, we'll fall back.
Sounds good.
Awesome, that's
that.
really great to hear.
So that's it with this stuff plus what we added. So I motion that we move bills and claims.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so then the other stuff that we added, the film application. Do we all have the details on that?
Yeah, I got an email.
I didn't print that, but I looked at it.
But basically, we're just waiving the insurance requirement for these folks to use our meeting room to do some filming. I'm comfortable with that because it feels similar to when any community group uses our meeting room. So I guess it's a film application, so we need to check off that box, and they've completed that form, and then they're also using our space here. Right, so I motion that we move this approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then public square concept that we've discussed for some time now. The landlord for the post office property is now chatting with the management company that handles the post office lease to see whether a public square concept would work. So he said that we should hear more before the end of the year.
Awesome.
And Tim, I was going to put something on the agenda at the beginning of the meeting. I didn't, but it was kind of tabled from last meeting, so I guess it's still there. It was a short discussion of board operating procedures. And my apologies for not bringing that up until just a moment ago, but KT reminded me.
Sure, you want to discuss that now?
Sure. I had sent an email around, and it was kind of hard to find, so I printed out copies. I was going to suggest that we make the following additions to our operating procedures. And it's, with the first one, I think this first item is being done anyway. I just wanted to codify it. And it says, with all meetings of the village board, workshop meetings, and special meetings of the village board will be recorded and made available to the public. I think that's controversial.
So where do you want to put that in? I sent you an email where I thought you should put it in now. I don't.
Is that,
remember what I said.
there's no reference to recording meetings in the procedures?
It doesn't specify workshop and special meetings.
So where does it say the regular ones are filmed? I'm just trying to find the exact space to put it in.
Okay, I didn't reference the document as to where to put it. I was just thinking it should be in there.
But you just said that we do say it somewhere. I'm sorry, I misunderstood that. I thought you said that it does say somewhere that we tape meetings.
No, I'm saying we probably are doing this anyway. We are doing this anyway. I just think it'd be good to
Oh, okay,
codify it. It may not be in there that we are filming our regular meetings either. So
You want to check, Alberta? Look at our existing procedures
Yep.
and see if there's reference to recording and making the recordings available to the public.
Yeah, I looked, I don't think there is, but then.
Because there's a
I think-
legal requirement where we have to take minutes. There's no legal requirement at all that we have to record or videotape meetings, but, you know, we view that as best practice.
Yeah, so it'd be good to acknowledge that in our procedures. And there was some discourse during a recent public hearing, and I had been referred to the New York State Handbook on conducting public meetings and public hearings. And the sentence that I was referred to, it actually appeared in the New Falls Times too, was that board members may want to ask questions of witnesses in order to clarify facts, opinions, present their testimony. In addition to questioning witnesses, the board may permit members of the public to question witnesses at the hearing. And that's fine and good. But the two concerns I had were actually addressed in the sentence before and the sentence after that quote in the same handbook. And the one sentence says the chair should also prevent others from interrupting the testimony. And interruptions were one of the concerns I had. And the other sentence immediately after the sentence I read and was cited is if it does so, the board should be careful not to turn the hearing into a debate. Open debates of public issues tend to raise people's emotional levels, diminish the board's control over hearings, and tend to discourage some witnesses from testifying. So my suggestion for our operating procedures is, and I have this in writing, Alberta, is during public hearings, trustees will adhere to New York State guidelines and limit their discourse to requests for information. Comments from the table will come at the conclusion, not during public hearing comment, and will be limited to requests for additional information. Rebuttals and statements of position may be made at the conclusion of the public comment portion of public hearings, but the point is not to interrupt speakers and do that while they're speaking.
Okay, so this section, and I don't know if there needs to be a differentiation between public comment and public hearing, because they are two different things, but I don't know if they need differentiation with respect to what we're talking about. On page 6, there's a bunch of guidelines for public comment already there.
Well, let me use the example of a former town board. When I, as a member of the public, came to that board to make comments, I often was interrupted and rebutted during the course of trying to make a public comment. And I find that very stifling. It does kind of, it makes people less likely and less enthusiastic about speaking. So I just wanted to make the point during public hearings, this board should be hearing from the public. We should not be interrupting them, we should not be rebutting them or debating them. And that point is backed up by the New York State Handbook on conducting public meetings and public hearings. So I just wanted to get that into our operating procedures.
So we did talk about this last time. One thing that we need to remember is that our meetings as a village and villages and towns have a myriad of different rules for each other. Our meetings are run by the presiding officer. So basically, the presiding officer is the one who gets to decide all of these things. That said, we have all these guidelines for public comment that say things that are very much related to what you're saying, but also says, but the presiding officer really gets to decide, unless a majority of the board doesn't agree with the presiding officer. So what we talked about when you weren't here last time was this idea that we think that the way this is laid out here provides us the flexibility to engage with the public when appropriate and to take that on a case-by-case basis. I don't think any of us would want to stifle or make it so people feel less inclined to participate. So I absolutely agree with you that whatever we do, it should be with the goal of making people feel comfortable talking to us and that we should be good listeners. Let me just finish. And that when all is said and done, we live in a very small place, and a lot of the people that come and talk to us, I think that it is a comfortable thing to engage with them. When we had the MBR workshops, we threw all the rules out and just had a free-for-all. And I think that was a really good thing at that particular time and place. at another time, when we have a room packed full of people and we want to let everybody speak, maybe we want to make sure everybody only gets 3 minutes and that nobody says anything until the end. So I feel like it's a balancing act between setting up sort of principles that we want to abide by and that are guiding principles, but also allow us the flexibility to be nimble based on the particular situation.
I don't see any value in valuing being nimble over the procedures recommended by New York State with the conduct of public meetings, which specifically says you shouldn't interrupt, and you shouldn't rebut, and you shouldn't debate. That's in the New York State Handbook on conducting public meetings. I certainly acknowledge the executive power of whoever's running the meeting, and I respect that, and I think I have. But I think we should have a policy where during a public hearing, we should be hearing, we should be listening, and not rebutting, and not debating, and not interrupting. I think that's it's not.
But I think debating and rebutting, sometimes you're getting more information. The idea is to capture information to move a process forward.
And we do want to be collegial. I mean, I have a horrible interrupting problem, and I'm working on it. So I hear you loud and clear, and that's sort of what happens to people who are movers and shakers, right? So, but there's a way of going about that. Those words are all negatively connotated, right? So I think someone that runs a meeting well can politely interrupt and say, may I ask a question about that before you go any further? Like I did with Anton tonight. Even though he said wait till the end, I was like, wait, it's right here, can I ask? And he was okay. So some of it is like very nuanced in how you go about it.
All right, well, I'm going to plan on making a motion at the next meeting that the board will adhere to the New York State Handbook standards on conducting public meetings and public hearings.
So you want to throw out what we already agreed to?
No, I'm just adding that to our current.
Okay, so I would suggest that you read what's here and that maybe it could be weaved in a way that we can find a place to meet in the middle.
Yeah, can we put that on the second meeting in December?
Sure.
Okay. All right, so I mentioned that we go into exec session. Was that everything? Yeah.
Water filtration plant?
Water filtration plant.
Oh, an update on that. So we're waiting to get the, bids back. I believe they come tomorrow afternoon. So, we've had concerns about the estimated cost of that project as recently as November 2016 was $4.1 million. And now we're estimating that it's nearly 25% more, closer to $5 million. And we've expressed some concern as a board to our engineers and our grant writer. And the engineer's response has been, let's see how the bids come back to see how much this project might end up costing. So we're going to get the bids and then review them with the engineer and our grant writer and go from there. So.
And we're all okay timeline-wise?
No, we're not. We have to make a decision whether we're going to have Paul Corporation manufacture this thing sooner rather than later, because there are certain milestones and dates where at some point there'll be a penalty if we say that we don't want to construct this thing by date X. Any questions? And I've been working with Ted Nitsa from our environmental policy board, trying to understand what our options are and might it make sense to engage a third-party firm to do some value engineering to understand, if there are ways to end up with a new water filtration unit that would cost less than $5 million. Okay, that's it on that.
I forgot I had two tiny little things on the board procedure stuff.
Yeah.
One is for the joint meetings, Alberta, I had put in here on the third Thursday of the month at their meeting place and alternating with the second Wednesday of the month here. And that didn't happen that way this fall, and I don't know if that's because I'm wrong.
Yeah, that is wrong. It's always supposed to be the, whose ever turn it is, it's their first meeting. So I think we meet on second and fourth Wednesdays, so if it's our turn, it's always second Wednesday. And then when does the town board meet? They meet, I don't know when, but whenever their first meeting is, if it's their turn, it's that meeting.
I think that's what this says. On
Does
the
it?
third Thursday of the month at town, and on the second Wednesday of the month at village.
No, because I don't think their first meeting is the third Thursday.
Oh, but it used to be.
You're right. They changed that a while ago.
Okay. That's, yeah.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's
So that needs
supposed
to
to
be
be their
changed now.
first meeting of the month, whatever.
It's their
those-
first meeting,
Okay.
and it's our first meeting.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head when their first and second is, but it might be the second. But we'll find out and fix that. And then I also, under workshop meetings, I mean, it might be okay because it says on an as-needed basis, but since we are seeing a need to have longer spans of time to talk about stuff,
What did that say? What?
under workshop meetings, it says on an as-needed basis, and I think it's fine just to leave that there, but maybe that we should all just assume moving forward. And I know I'm the one that screwed it up in November by having a plan on the third Wednesday of the month. But from here on out, I'm gonna suggest we just all assume we have one until we say we're not.
I don't think we should do that.
No?
No way. I don't want to add another meeting.
I third that.
Third.
As needed is.
As needed.
I'm not, okay, well, okay.
Sure, pencil
So,
it in, pencil it in.
Maybe, okay.
But I really want to try to avoid adding workshop meetings. Sometimes we have to. But I don't want the default to be, let's assume there's a monthly workshop meeting.
Okay. We'll see
Because
how
we already
2018
have
goes.
3 meetings a month anyways, with our 2 meetings plus a joint meeting.
Right, well, we do those at the same night, though.
That,
Okay,
for
I
me,
hear you,
for
that's
me,
fine.
for me, it's a lot more work, because I have to, work on that agenda. So for me, it's a third meeting, it's not just another night. And for everyone, like, I know we all have mushy brains by the end of that meeting too. It's tough to get work done with so much stuff.
I'd like to make a motion to go in executive session to discuss the specific history of a specific individual.
Second, all in favor, aye?
Can I stop this and take it down? Or does it come back to the decision, right?
Yeah. I literally uploaded my screens on California.
Thank you.
Do you know where the bathroom is?
Go out the store, down the hall is the first door on the left.
Thank you.
Good night.
You too.